Dear students, welcome to the session on internal analysis, resources and capabilities. My name is Dr. Amit Kumar. I am an assistant professor at Strategy and IB Group at Warwick Business School. In this video lecture, we will understand the concepts of resources, capabilities and core competencies. Let us see what are resources and capabilities. So the question arises, what are the sources of competitive advantage? There are two predominant schools of thought. According to the industrial economists, firm's strategic positioning determines its competitive advantage. If the firm is operating in an industry which has high growth rate, low intensity of competition, and high entry barriers, the firm should have higher competitive advantage and potentially superior financial performance. Organizational scholars, on the other hand, argue that a firm's competitive advantage comes from its organizational resources. That means its assets, which are tradable and can be tangible or intangible, and the capabilities, which are intangible and embedded in organization structure, processes, routines, and culture. So what do we mean by strategic positioning? Strategic positioning of a firm tells us which product markets and customer segments it is serving. For example, Tesla is strategically positioned in the segment of high-end automobile run by electricity. Positioning influences a firm's long-term growth opportunities and financial performance. That is why it is important to analyze industries when a firm decides which industries to enter and which ones to exit. In this slide, I have listed the industries with highest gross margins in the US. This data is taken from Statista. So in 2020, various banking and financial services, railroad transportation, software, real estate, semiconductors, and precious metals were industries with highest margins. On the other hand, industries with the lowest margins included green and renewable energy, electronics, oilfield services, biotech-based pharmaceutical industry, and telecom, etc. So firms operating in the first set of industries, for example, railroad transportation, will have a higher competitive advantage and financial performance than the firms operating in the second set of industries, like biotech-based pharmaceutical industry. However, in this slide, we see that some selected biotech-based drug firms indeed have profit margins over 67% in an industry where margins are minus 0.87%. So while industry conditions increase the performance of firms operating in it, but what accounts for variance in performance within a product market or within an industry? This variance is explained by a very powerful theoretical perspective called resource-based view of firm. According to this view, performance variance among firms is a function of the differences in resources and capabilities they possess. Resource-based view conceptualizes firms as bundles of productive resources. So what are resources? Resources are assets and capabilities that firms use to conceive and implement their strategies. So a firm's resource base influences firm's strategic options, that is, which opportunities the firm can pursue, and also facilitate implementation of those strategies. Now a little bit about the differences between assets and capabilities. Assets can be tangible or intangible. These resources can be traded. So for example, you can trade equipments, plants, mining rights, brand names, patent rights, financial capital, strategic information, human resources, etc. Now, you can understand capabilities in terms of firm's ability to do something. For example, a firm can be good at doing R&D in material science. So this is one capability, domain-specific technological capability. Similarly, it can have functional capabilities, for example, in the area of supply chain, marketing, operations, large-scale production, etc. It can have managerial capabilities that it can manage a company very well. It can integrate resources very well. Capabilities in making political connections and lobbying, etc. So capabilities are intangible resources which are embedded in organization and therefore cannot be traded. For example, you cannot sell your capability of lobbying to another firm or another organization. So capabilities are complex, tacit, that means you cannot easily codify it, and these are accumulated over time through organizational learning. Scholars have proposed a framework called VRIN framework to determine whether a resource gives competitive advantage to a firm. According to this framework, a resource should be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. Now let's go to these one by one. A resource is valuable when it can be deployed to exploit opportunities or neutralize threats from the environment. If it cannot, it is either irrelevant or obsolete. Let me give you an example. When digital photography became popular, many firms' capabilities in the areas of photo filmmaking became irrelevant. Now the second factor. A resource should be rare, that is, it should not be possessed by firms' current or potential competitors. If all competing firms have the same resource, it is no more differentiating factor. Let's take an example. Let us imagine that all firms have high quality equipment. In this case, no firm has competitive advantage. Third, a resource should be hard to imitate. It happens when it is either protected by law, for example, in case of patents, copyrights, brand names, etc., or it is a product of firm's historical evolution. In the latter case, it is difficult to pinpoint why the firm is so good at doing something. For example, Apple is known for its design capabilities, and it is hard to know why it produces aesthetically superior products even after the death of Steve Jobs. It is perhaps because the emphasis on aesthetics has become part of Apple's organizational culture and has permeated into all its product design decisions and day-to-day product development routines or activities. So it is hard for other firms to copy Apple's design capability. Now at the end, in order to create competitive advantage, a resource should be non-substitutable by other sets of resources. Otherwise, even if a resource is valuable, rare, and hard to imitate, the competing firms will find out a way to circumvent the firm's competitive advantage. Let me tell you a little bit about the managerial capability of a firm, which is crucial for its survival and economic performance. Managerial capability denotes the ability of a firm's managers to run the organization and to make and implement strategies and operational decisions by directly affecting and coordinating other resources, inputs, and capabilities. In this sense, it is an integrating capability as the managers integrate firms' resources and capabilities towards a strategic goal. Managerial capability consists of human capital, social capital, that is, their networks and connections, and the cognition of the top management executives, other managers in the organizations. It can be middle managers, lower rung managers, and the members of the board of directors. Now, a note on resource deployment and redeployment in an organization. Resource deployment means how the firm will put a resource in use in different organizational and market settings. Let me give you an example. Suppose that there is an energy company which has two businesses. One, the traditional fossil fuel based energy generation, and the second, generation of renewable wind energy. So this company has strong capabilities in lobbying, which it traditionally used to lobby for more subsidies for fossil fuel based energy generation business. Now, the company recently decided to put more emphasis on renewable energy business. So it decided to redeploy its lobbying capabilities to get subsidies for renewable energy and get more public funding or public investment on renewable energy research. So now you can see that this firm not only changed its strategic focus, but also redeployed its capability from one or traditional strategic goal to another new strategic goal. So resources which are fungible, that is, which can be easily redeployed, are more generalist in nature. Some of the more generalist resources are land, financial resources, managerial capability, etc. Very often, a firm acquires another firm in the same industry, what we call horizontal acquisition. Appropriating the resources of the target firm and redeploying them to the strategic goals of the acquiring firm is very common. It is also facilitated by the common industrial context of resource use of both the firms. In this section, we will try to understand capabilities in diversified firms and the concept of core competence. By diversified firms, we mean companies which operate in multiple product markets. For example, Apple is a diversified firm. We have Apple personal computers, laptops, Apple watches, Apple phones, Apple Music, Apple cars, etc. Diversified firms are quite common in family firms. For example, Tata operates in multiple businesses including automobile, hospitality, steel, aviation, tea, finance, jewelry, even salt. So in 1990, C.K. Prahlad and Gary Hamel, two scholars, introduced the concept of core competence in context of diversified firms. They argued that a diversified firm should be conceptualized as portfolio of capabilities rather than portfolio businesses. Some of these capabilities are valuable for firm across businesses and create competitive advantage of the firm across product markets. These capabilities are called core competencies. So let me give you an example in the next slide. This example is given by Prahlad and Hamel. Canon has capabilities in three technology areas: precision mechanics, fine optics, and microelectronics. Canon applies these capabilities for developing its various core products, ranging from basic and electronic cameras to fax machines, calculators, printers, video systems, and mask aligners. So Canon's capabilities in these three technologies are its core competencies, which help it gain competitive advantage across these various product markets.